Brendan Rodgers. There isn't a whole lot to not like about Brendan Rodgers, and he's already a consensus top 10 prospect in the industry, and more likely a top five one. I mean, if you go around and look at all these lists that are starting to come out now, he's up there. And he's only had one full season under his belt. But that's what you get when you're the third overall pick in the draft. You play shortstop, and your future games are going to be at Coors Field. His sample size, as I mentioned, is still relatively small, but the results to this point have been overwhelmingly positive and exactly what you want to see in a high school bat in his first taste of the pros. His season was 110 games for low A Asheville in the Sally League. He posted a 281 average with 19 homers and 73 RBIs. As I mentioned, he's 19 years old. It's off to a good start. All good stuff. I would, however, like to point out some flaws, some things you might be able to raise an eyebrow to, and some reason for pause. Let's consider the following things to not be in his benefit. He's still likely 2+ years away at best. He hasn't shown a ton of speed as far as steals go to this point. Asheville is a hitter's park, and Rodgers' home numbers were far ahead of his road splits. In fact, 13 of his 19 home runs came at home. This is not horrible, and for comparison, it's almost the identical stat line that Trevor Story put up in the same system, in the same league, in the same ballpark at the same age. The only difference is Story played in 12 more games. So if you like Story and what he's been doing so far as a pro, then there's room to think that Rodgers is in fact going to be as good, if not better. He shows incredible discipline at an early age. The strikeout rate isn't enormously high, 20%, and the walk rate at 11%. As I mentioned, everything, he's off to a great start. Ralph, I'm giving reasons for pause. I know you love Rodgers, but
Yeah, so let me hit you with some Rodgers love because the concerns are valid. He doesn't have a lot of speed. I think one of the things when you compare and contrast him with Trevor Story, who's obviously was up and really hit the ground running last year, to say the least, when he finally got to Coors Field, finally got to Colorado. Story has a lot more speed than Rodgers does. Rodgers has a better hit tool. This is a guy that could hit 280 to 300 perennially throughout his career. That's the kind of player that he profiles as. Though the home ballpark is obviously very hitter friendly, it's a hitting haven. He was one of the youngest, if not the youngest player in full season ball last year. I think that sort of speaks volumes about his maturity, both as a player on and off the field. Across the board, though, I think that he's one of the more exciting prospects. Part of it is his future destination in Coors. If he moves over to second base, I think the power probably profiles well there. Depends, what happens with him and Story. Story's probably a little bit better of a defender, so I would expect him to stick at short and have Rodgers probably move over to second. But I also disagree with one other thing, that he's 2+ years away. I think that we could probably see Rodgers up in the big league sometime in 2018. DJ LeMahieu is out of contract, I believe, after this season. If it's 2 years, then LeMahieu probably gets traded. I think this is probably LeMahieu's replacement. They have him in the system, and he should see some at-bats with AA Hartford this year, if not a majority of them. Hopefully we can go there this year, and the ballpark will actually be open. You won't have to drive out like you did to see Lucas Giolito and then realize that you drove to Hartford when they weren't actually playing in Hartford. So it should be pretty interesting. I'm excited to go see Rodgers play. I think he's a top 10 prospect. When my top 100 drops a couple Wednesdays from now on the 22nd over on Razzball, Rodgers will be well within my top 10.
You did say he'll shtick to the position, right? Is that part of your shtick? Okay.
Shtick.
Just to clear up real quick, and I would love to meet you in Hartford to take in a Brendan Rodgers, at bat. But I didn't go to Hartford to see Giolito thinking or knowing that they weren't playing in Hartford. It was a home game on the schedule. However, you could have missed a tiny little asterisk that said technically designated a home game for Hartford, yet will be played on the road in Pennsylvania because Hartford Stadium is under renovation. I wish I had known that before the 2-hour drive that turned into an 8-hour drive because of construction on I-95, whatever. Another story for another day. Brendan Rodgers. This is how I like to look at Brendan Rodgers and Trevor Story, since we mentioned him. A family that has 2 brothers, and the oldest brother is technically the heir to the throne or the family fortune or business, whatever you have you. But the younger brother is like the better looking one, the more charismatic one, the one that everybody just thinks of all the time is like, that's daddy's boy. And it just becomes an awkward position for associates of the family, friends of the family itself, because the oldest one is technically the heir to the throne, but the youngest one is really who everybody knows is pegged to get it. That's kind of what happens with Story and Rodgers, where Rodgers is the one everybody is waiting for, everybody wants, but Story's been pretty good, and he's there now. So it's kind of an awkward little thing. A lot of shortstops start out as shortstops and then get moved off the position as their career progresses. If Rodgers is going to be moved to second base, I think you can expect his prospect status to jump even higher. And he's already in thin air, rare air, and I mean on prospect list, not in course. As a shortstop, I think great, but it's a loaded position now. If you move him to second with a shortstop's bat, I don't know how you can get better as a prospect. You have a slim, if any, hope of getting him in Dynasty right now. That window is quickly closing. So if you're wondering about Rodgers, debating about Rodgers, thinking, is this somebody I should be giving up, these two decent prospects I have or whatever, yeah, don't hold back. Get the guy if you can.